Welcome to a special edition of the Goal Line Stand, all football all the time. I am Michael Lipinski. I am joined, as always, by Brett Halpern. And this is episode number 1 of our 32 for 32 NFL preview series, the Los Angeles Chargers. This is how thing is going to work. 32 teams, 32 days. We're going to review the team's off seasons, some of their key acquisitions, key departures, their draft. And we're also going to ask some key questions. What makes a team successful for the 2020 season, assuming that we have a 2020 season.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, which is part of the battle. Brett, how are we?
Hanging in, excited. Anytime I start thinking about previews and the analysis going into it, I know football's coming. It's a little bit more tenuous than in other years, but still love it, still excited, and just enjoy all the analysis.
Absolutely. We love having your analysis. Everyone enjoyed the analysis post NFL draft, and this is going to be fun. So let's get to it. The LA Chargers, and I swear I'm not going to call them the San Diego Chargers. That's my goal for this here program. I have it written down, LA. Here it is, the LA Chargers. 2019 record, 5-11, last place in the AFC West. Key acquisitions. Let's run through this a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that they had a really excellent free agent haul. I mean, bringing in Chris Harris Jr., perennial Pro Bowler, in addition, coming from within the division from the Broncos, that was a really good acquisition. Brian Balaga, he's a really nice offensive tackle. He's just been super solid throughout his career. From Iowa, right tackle who just slide right in there and be a big bolster for that offensive line. Linval Joseph, speaking of big men, is a great run stuffer, nose tackle. Was originally a New York Giant, then he's been a long-time Minnesota Viking. Then they did an interesting trade as well. They had Trey Turner, who they acquired from the Panthers in exchange for Russell Okung. So that's another interesting one. In terms of departures, obviously the biggest one there that everyone could see is Phillip Rivers. I mean, similar to the Eli Manning retirement, it's definitely a new era for the Chargers. I think the other, when you weigh the acquisitions as compared to the departures, I definitely think their acquisitions outweigh their departures. Melvin Gordon is a good running back, but I thought Austin Eckler had a wonderful season.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon, we just people are going to look at that and they're going to say, "Oh my God, how did the Chargers let go of Melvin Gordon? How they did just let him walk away?" Because he's a name, right? He's a named player.
Yeah,
we discussed this at length on the Goal Line Stand that running back is not the value for a running back has changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always point at the Giants, who you're a Giants fan. I say, hey, Saquon Barkley, great player, great for the community, but maybe the Giants a few years ago should have went a different direction.
Yep.
As opposed to paying for drafting and now paying for a running back. And that's where the Chargers are here with Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Melvin Gordon himself, one of the reasons he's not a Charger is because he actually overvalued himself. Remember, he held out last year. Yep. And that did not help them out. Didn't help him out, didn't help the team out. Thomas Davis in his day was a great linebacker, but he's definitely this will probably be the last year of his career. And then Linval Joseph is definitely an upgrade over Brandon Meebane. So all in all, like I said, if you had to balance out acquisitions and departures, they definitely won free agency.
Yeah, they did. I would agree that there's more to the plus than there is to the minus.
Yeah,
let's talk 2020 NFL draft. I really like their first 2 selections at the NFL draft. Justin Herbert, he's going to be maybe the heir apparent at quarterback. Let's see how this plays out. I really like the Kenneth Murray selection, but we'll start with the quarterback.
Yeah, well, Mike, those who watched our mock draft show back in March, or excuse me, April, I understand picking Justin Herbert. I had him ranked a little lower, but again, it's the same, sort of the flip side from the running back argument. Quarterbacks are just so important they had to draft him with that sixth spot. I think you probably could have gotten him a little bit later in the first round, but if you have a conviction for a quarterback, you draft him. So I have no issue with that. And I agree with you. Their second first round pick, where they traded back up into the first round to get Kenneth Murray, is a wonderful athlete. I think he's going to fit in tremendously as a weak side linebacker for the Chargers and just roam all over the field and wreak a lot of havoc. So I like that pick. Joshua Kelly is a nice running back. For those Eagles fans, remember his college coach is none other than Chip Kelly. So that should be interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, I think he has emotional intelligence. So all accounts is actually a really good kid, and a good player. I actually thought that one of the strengths of this draft class for the Chargers was they got really good value from the wide receiver position with what I think are promising prospects in the 5th and 7th round with Joe Reed from Virginia, KJ Hill from Ohio State. Joe Reed was really more of a kick returner, but with Bryce Perkins as your quarterback, who was more of a scrambler, not known for his throwing prowess, it was really difficult to evaluate him as a wide receiver. And then secondly, with KJ Hill, his problem was in the 40, he ran a 4.67, which is why he was in the 7th round. But Mike, as you well know, there's testing speed and then there's game speed.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah, and he plays much faster than that. And beyond that, he has good hands, good route runner. And I think those are some of the reasons why they recently, within the past 2 weeks, the Chargers let go of a former Rutgers receiver, Andre Patton, who at times last year was their third wide receiver.
Yeah, KJ Hill is a guy that the numbers aren't going to tell you who he is as a player. And maybe we could be wrong. He's a 7th round pick. He could not even flame out. He could just never pan out. But watching him play as Big Ten guys, that's a steal. That's a steal.
Yeah, a lot of production and a lot of upside for a 7th round pick. That's the way I view it. And the same goes for Joe Reed. And plus, it's always nice to have another dynamic returner.
The more weapons you can have on a football field, the better. So
absolutely.
We're going to get into it now. We're going to get into some of the pressing needs here for the LA Chargers.
You didn't get to the whole
Diego
part. So.
I know. It's difficult. It's difficult. We have 4 key questions for the LA Chargers in 2020. This is assuming we have a season. Right now, we're going to say we are.
Fingers crossed.
How much will the Chargers miss Phillip Rivers? And I added an extra L. I apologize.
Well, it could have been better if you had an E, that it would have been Philippe.
Yeah, it's true.
From the Montreal Alouettes. No, how much will they miss him? I don't think as much as you'd think. Now, he did throw for 4,600 yards last year. His touchdowns, though, were down from, the year before, he almost had a near MVP season. His touchdown numbers were down. He only had 23 touchdowns last year. His interceptions were way up. The game they had in Mexico against the Chiefs, he almost single-handedly lost that game with several interceptions. I think his arm strength looked not quite what it was. That's one of the things that got Phillip Rivers by all these years. So I don't think they're going to miss him terribly. Like Tyrod Taylor, I respect. He once played for my second favorite team, apparently, the Buffalo Bills, led them to the playoffs. And, I think he's a good stopgap. He's a pro's pro, and I think he's going to serve them well this year. For as long as they're competitive, I believe Tyrod Taylor will be the starting quarterback. So I don't think they're going to miss Rivers that much.
No, I agree with you. I don't. He's kind of the guy I think that he wore out his welcome between between San Diego and LA. There was when the team moved, if you remember.
Yeah,
he was. I don't want to call it babyish, but diva-ish a little bit about the whole thing.
Yeah,
and we'll get to him going to Indianapolis and when we preview the Colts, but this isn't. And I don't think Chargers fans are viewing it as a bad thing. This isn't not necessarily a bad thing for them.
No, well, look, it's time. And, I would say, who I thought was really good about this, frankly, were the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. I think and the saying is you'd always rather let go of a star 1 year too early as opposed to 2 years too late, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I mean, to me, I thought that was never better than when the Eagles did it with their cornerbacks, with Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor, and making the switch to Lito Shepard and Sheldon Brown, right? I thought that was like a great
Right.
transition. So it's time that he hit his ceiling. He was never going to win a Super Bowl. They had a really good team 2 years ago, and they got smoked by the Patriots in the divisional playoff round. It's just time. So and they drafted the heir apparent. So you wish him luck. You retire his number, and that's about it.
Does Herbert get on the field this year? By that, I mean meaningful snaps. Is he playing by the end of the year or no?
So I think one thing, and I should probably put this disclaimer, and maybe we'll do this for every episode, but I'm evaluating this team as I would in any normal summer because obviously, knock on wood, COVID could change so many
Yeah,
dynamics.
yeah.
I mean, I'd literally have to be a genie to be able to foresee that. But in a normal circumstance, I think Justin Herbert's a guy who really needs seasoning. And one thing because of COVID, because it was an unusual offseason, I would let him sit and watch for a year. I think there's certain players that would benefit from going out there. I think he's one he would benefit from sitting there and watching a pro like Tyrod Taylor run the offense and then slowly implement it. I mean, obviously, if there's blowouts one way or another, get him some action. If look, if it 5 games left in the season and they're already mathematically eliminated, yeah, throw him out there.
Right.
Unless the offensive line is so bad that you're worried that he'll get injured.
That leads us right to question number 2 here. So
Yeah.
forget the quarterback question. Will the offensive line hold up for the Chargers?
Hey, look, Mike, you and I, we were brought up very similarly, and particularly with the game of football. And it doesn't matter how good your skill position guys are. If you don't have guys up front, it doesn't matter. I'm actually a little bit more bullish on this offensive line as it's currently constructed than others. Obviously, you traded for Trey Turner. The right side of their offensive line, is pretty good. You have Trey Turner. You brought in Brian Balaga. You have Marquise Pouncey, and he had a neck issue. So if he's able to come back, I think, look, he was a perennial Pro Bowler. He's an excellent player, aside from being one of Aaron Hernandez's buddies, but that's neither here nor there. The left side of the line is kind of interesting. You have Forrest Lamp, who is a former, I believe he was a high second round pick. And then the real question is going to be left tackle. Right now, I think the two guys who are going to be competing for that spot are Trey Pipkins, who was a third round pick last year out of Sioux Falls, the D2 school, and Sam Tevy out of Utah, who is a converted defensive lineman. But you also, Forrest Lamp played left tackle at Western Kentucky. I think these guys could. I don't see this being as good as the Eagles or the Cowboys' offensive lines for the last few years. I think they could hold up though. So, but the other thing is, and as you all know, Mike, this I was about to say it, this Los Angeles Charger team, they always get these freak injuries in
Yeah,
training camp, and
yeah.
it's amazing we have not yet heard from one. It was like every year, it's like, oh yeah, first day Hunter Henry goes down, or before then it was Antonio Gates. It's always an injury with these guys.
It is. It is always an injury with those guys, and they are healthy. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about health.
Yeah.
What's more important for the Chargers, a healthy Nick Bosa or a healthy Derwin James?
I mean, that is a tough question. So both of these guys are all pros, right? I think we could both agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked
Yeah.
about the Bosa family as a whole
Yeah.
on one of
Yeah.
our last podcasts of the main goal line stand. So
Yeah.
our thoughts are out there on Bosa.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, would I love to have Nick Bosa? Yes. It's an interesting question because I think you're evaluating two players, but you're also, to me, it's what do you believe in terms of your defense? I think Derwin James can do more things. He he was injured for most of last year. I think he had a Liz Frank injury. And he brings so many different dimensions to that defense because of his positional versatility. Very much the same way I'm interested to see Isaiah Simmons, the rookie for the Cardinals. We'll get into him in another episode. Um, Bosa is, your classic edge rusher and is excellent at what he does. To me, though, nothing replaces a pass rush. So I believe the Chargers last year, Bosa had 11 and a half sacks. The Chargers only had 30 sacks. So if you took away Bosa, that's very little. The next highest guy was Melvin Ingram with 7. After that, no one else hit 3. You need a guy who can rush the passer. So as good and
Right.
as unique as Derwin James is, I still think Nick Bosa is the key.
The safety cannot be effective if he's always out there on an island, by himself with multiple guys. You have to
Yeah.
get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
It'll relate back when we get to the Philadelphia Eagles. There's always secondary issues. If you can't rush the quarterback, you can't disrupt the presence there. You don't have to tackle him. You don't have to sack him. You just have to be there, be disruptive.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. And I agree.
I don't care. I mean, look, Deion Sanders, one of the top. I think we would agree, one of the top 3 cornerbacks of all time. If Deion, okay, I know
we can debate that on another day on an episode of the Golden Stand.
Absolutely. Either way, take whoever you believe is the best cornerback of all time, and have him go man to man on a decent receiver. If there is no pass rush and the quarterback has 4 to 5 seconds to throw each time, he's not going that receiver is going to have a hell of a day. It doesn't matter. You got to get after the quarterback.
Absolutely, you absolutely have to get after the quarterback.
Yeah,
we're gonna wrap this thing up. Who and what are keys to success for the Bolts?
So, I think that there's a few under the radar names, particularly defensively, because I think this is a really strong defensive unit. This team is not going to win shootouts. This team is built for winning those 2017 games. It's strange because it's the AFC West, and we grew up with, and look, even now you have Mahomes, and we're going to talk, the next few days about the Raiders and the Broncos, who are they're doing the opposite of the Chargers are building this team around their defense right now, whereas the Broncos and Raiders, which we'll get into, are building it around the offense. So to me, it's about the bolstering of this defense. And I think 2 names in particular that could really take this team, this defensive unit, to an elite level. One is their first round pick last year, Jerry Tillery, the defensive tackle from Notre Dame. Played decently. He didn't crack the starting lineup. I believe he had 2 or 3 sacks. I think he could be the penetrating 3 technique and complement Linval Joseph really well. And if he's in there and he's able to penetrate like that, you then are going to open up Bosa and Ingram on the outside with the pass rush. Secondly, their second round pick last year, the Fighting Bluehead, Nasir Adderley, he missed like the entire year. But this is a guy who has exceptional athleticism. He's like one of that true center fielder. They get him.
He was thought very highly.
Yeah,
very highly.
Absolutely.
Before the season.
Yeah, you bring him on, and I think he would pair exceptionally well with Derwin James. You have him just be the center fielder, roam there in the back, and then you really have a standout defensive unit that could hold teams to, to them, they got to hold teams to 20 points and under. So to me, those are the 2 biggest. And offensively, I would say you need to find a reliable third wide receiver after Keenan Allen and Mike Williams.
There we go. And you will get our prediction on the NFL Prediction Show, which is coming up later this month. Actually, I guess it would be September at this point. Coming up September, right before the NFL season, we're going to be doing a huge NFL kickoff show. This is a Section 247 podcast. Join the other podcasts if you're a combat sports fan, MMA, pro wrestling, boxing. In the Fight drops usually Mondays, occasionally Tuesdays. Sometimes it's 3 times a week. Recently on the program, we had Cage Fury Fighting Championship heavyweight champion Sean Teed, up-and-coming fighter out of Rufus Sport, Lenny Rufati, and obviously there is the Goal Line Stand all football, all the time, every football Friday. This has been your LA Chargers preview show. Join us tomorrow as we continue our journey in the AFC West with the now Las Vegas Raiders. We will see you later. Stay safe.